In a so-called free state, officials and stakeholders concoct solutions to problems often created by other bureaucrats and with little regard for infringements on the people. These stories are born at the apex of freedom and entrepreneurship. We foolishly advocate for the taxpayer. Brian's Beat presents Freedom Fools.
And a very good afternoon. Very nice afternoon. Hope you're enjoying it. If you are going out, by all means, take that cell phone with you and download the WBSM app and listen to us that way. And you can also chat with me or telephone me at 508-996-0500. I am back for Saturday. And I hope you are enjoying this day. I'm Brian, by the way. If you are new to the station, welcome. Glad to have you. On this show, we talk a lot about freedom, a lot about stuff that's happening here in the background. And sometimes we seem to ignore some of the bigger things that are happening in the United States of America and around the world. We don't ignore them intentionally. Sometimes we get sidetracked with some of the topics that we happen to bring up. And I will admit, for the majority of this week, at least since, Wednesday, we have been hot and heavy on this story about Officer Taj, who is a New Bedford police officer, effective June 20th. He is a legal permanent resident. He is not a U.S. citizen, and that seems to bother some folks. The process of who should and should not be a New Bedford police officer has also bothered others. And so we will definitely talk about that on the program today. Let me quickly state, during hour number 3, we're going to talk about your electricity bill and the idea that you may be getting a smart meter to read your electric readings. Our guest will highly advise against it. He is Elijah D'Souza, and he is the person who formed the group Citizens Against Eversource. So that will be during hour number 3. So if you're interested in talking about that, I suggest and recommend, actually, that you hold off until the 3 o'clock hour when we'll get into that. Today is Americans with Disabilities Day. Americans with Disabilities. It's also Armed Forces Unification Day. I know about an Armed Forces Day. I did not know that we had an Armed Forces Unification Day, but apparently we do. It is also Aunts and Uncles Day and National Drowning Prevention Day. Sad that we should be bringing that up when a couple of days ago an older gentleman died in Fairhaven, drowned in the waters around here. President Harry S. Truman signed into law the National Security Act of 1947. So you get an idea what year he did it, which created the CIA, the Department of Defense, the Air Force, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the National Security Council. All of these agencies predate me. The Department of Defense, I believe, used to be known as the Department of War. But as I list off these different things that developed because of the National Security Act of 1947, remember we're peacetime at that particular time, the CIA, has that been a worthwhile investment, in your opinion? DOD To me, that's just a name change, but has it grown beyond proportion? The Joint Chiefs of Staff, the National Security Council, and the Air Force. No problem with the Air Force. I guess I come from, I'm old school with some of the stuff. And I guess I come from the side of the street that says if you have an Air Force, why do you need an Army Air Force? So in other words, the Army also flies planes on missions. Why not just have that part of the Air Force? The Navy flies planes off of, they have bases, and they also fly them off of aircraft carriers and other military apparatus. Why not have the Air Force do that? Just saying, I don't expect anybody to really work on it, but just seems to me you've got a flying wing of the military. Why not put them to work in that capacity? So in other words, if you want to fly, why would we have you go into the Army or the Navy? Why not the Air Force? And you can have flyers that fly off of aircraft carriers. You could have flyers that fly off the ground and in Army support. Just saying. The very next year, so now we're into 1948, President Truman desegregated the military. Wow. Truman did a lot in his time in office. He dropped the only atomic bombs, nuclear bombs. He gave us the CIA, the Air Force, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the National Security Council. He desegregated the military. Of course, he also got us involved with the United Nations and Korea. President H.W. Bush, George, he gave us the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990. He also pulled us out of Iraq at the given time to do so. His son got us back into Iraq when we didn't need to be there. The Brian Speak quote of the day: "Today, you are you. That is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you." You know who did that one. Today, you are you. That is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you. Dr. Seuss. All right, 508-996-0500. That's how you get onto the program today. One quick one that I want to throw in there. I just saw this at WBSM.com. You may already know about it. When I would drive down Belleville Ave, and I'd be heading from, let's say, Coggeshall, and I'm going down all the way to the end sometimes, but usually where I'm going to turn right to make my way over toward Acushnet. Inevitably, I drive by a bunch of restaurants and shops. One shop that I always would take a little quick peek at would be Amaral's. Amaral's has it all, after all. Well, Amaral's no longer has it all. Apparently, they have closed. In fact, there's a sign that reads, "Permanently closed." There are all kinds of places that I could see closing. Amaral's, for whatever reason. And it's not like I'm a shopper at Amaral's. I've been in there a couple of times, but I don't think I ever bought anything. However, I never thought that place would close. And I see an Amaral's in Fall River. I don't know if that one is still open or not. I just never thought, like the commercial, Amaral's has it all. I never thought Amaral's would close. And I know there has to be a lot of people in this area who are shocked that Amaral's is closed. I have to pinch myself a couple of times because I'm in disbelief. But it seems to be following a trend. If you are locally sourced, in this particular case, a locally sourced store, a mom and pop type operation, your chance for survival lately is pretty small. I have no idea. In fact, the article at WBSM.com doesn't state why the store is closing. It just said that it closed. Michael Rock actually wrote that story. But if it's new to you, then I'm glad to give you some information that you can talk to some friends about, because it's my guess, whether you're like me, you've been in that store a couple of times, or you used to go in there on a regular basis, you're kind of shocked. You're saying to yourself, what next? If Amaral's is closing, what is going to close next? There might be some others that are thinking, that's a pretty good location. Maybe I want to go rent that spot. I don't know. I get dismayed when I walk around or I drive around and I see places that have been around seemingly longer than me closing their doors. It's a bit disturbing. Maybe not to you, but it is to me. Okay, 508-996-0500. I know there are folks that are still bothered by this whole thing dealing with is he a citizen? Should he be a citizen? What changed on the frequently asked questions page? How do you go about changing policy without either the city council voting on it or the police department having some kind of say in it? These are questions today that still remain unanswered. We did get notice, courtesy of the police department, that the frequently asked questions page has changed to reflect that it is not only you have to be a U.S. citizen, but you can also be a permanent legal resident to be a New Bedford police officer. And I can understand and concur with folks that are a little miffed how all of a sudden did that change. Well, to the best of Brian's knowledge, there is nothing etched anywhere else in the city's charter, in any of the city bylaws, the police bylaws. Nowhere else is there anything written that says you must be a U.S. citizen in order to be a New Bedford police officer. And lack of anything like that, that means there is no written policy. That doesn't mean you can't have an oral or, it's just kind of common knowledge, of which, to the best of my knowledge and yours, that doesn't exist either. In fact, it has been thrown upon our feet that the frequently asked questions page has changed. And so that means everything else has changed. Well, Tim Weisberg did a little research, and Tim found out that prior to, I believe it was April, it might have been March, there was no frequently asked questions page. So I understand how folks are upset about this so-called change. If you really do believe that a person should be a U.S. citizen in order to be a New Bedford police officer, then I'm going to suggest that you talk to your city councilors. Is this something that they agree with you on? Because you're going to need at least 6 city councilors in order to get them to pass a vote that would make it a rule in the city of New Bedford that police officers must be a U.S. citizen. I'm going to change must to shall be a United States citizen. I don't know. I have not asked the city councilors if they think that is a worthy change. I am miffed by how this has changed. However, I am okay. Repeat, I am okay with a New Bedford police officer who is a legal permanent resident. And whether Officer Taj decides that he wants to become a U.S. citizen or not is his own private decision. And as long as he isn't affected by his employ or by his citizenship in his employment, I don't think any of us should worry about it. And it still surprises me. In fact, how much of a big deal is it if the city has the policy the way that it is right now? Now, you might be upset that they made a sleight of hand change, but does it really bother you that the person is not a U.S. citizen? 508-996-0500. Love to hear from you today. Hello.
Oh,
Hey.
Good sunny afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
Let me just, and I guess I'm referred to as what's known as an iconoclast or a contrarian, in that I tend to always challenge whatever is sort of accepted orthodoxy as well as what may be the popular fad on things. And this issue of citizenship in relation to being a law enforcement officer of any city or town anywhere in the United States begs the question of, if you are here, are you or are you not subject to all of the laws of the United States, the state you're in, and the city that you might be applying for a job in? And to that end, if you are, then whether you're a citizen or not would seem to be somewhat irrelevant to whether or not you are qualified to be a police officer. And also, yet your loyalty, you take an oath as a police officer to uphold all of the laws. And if you were to put the qualifications down on all of the current New Bedford police officers, and my son-in-law was a police officer in New Bedford for a number of years. He has since moved to another state, but I kind of know a little bit about police in Fall River. And if you put their qualifications down and you said, this one, great, and then you found out one of them was not a citizen, then I think that your ability to fairly and accurately judge the qualifications to be a police officer is lacking.
I would tend to agree with you 1,000% on that. I think it bothers me mostly as a black male because folks didn't want to be arrested by a black person way back when. They didn't want to be arrested by a woman way back when. And I think it was the same when Hispanics first got onto the police or on a police force. So I think there's a mind block that's going on, because I think as time progresses, that too will pass.
Well, let me just insert the following. Some years ago, I was involved in government at the local level in my town for many years, and the superintendent of schools applied for a job in another district, and he told us, he says, and he was a finalist for the position, and at his public interview, he was asked, "Do you intend to move to town if you are the successful applicant?" And he said, "Well, no." And they said, "Well, there are members of the committee who think that a superintendent of schools should be a resident of the town." And he says, "I don't see where you live is a qualification for you to hold a municipal job." And in point of fact, as a local official in my town, I found that one of the problems of hiring people who were only local residents was they frequently had conflicts of interest because they had personal relationships with the people they were interacting with.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about whether or not to
you're
arrest
absolutely
somebody,
right. I mean, plumbers, if you are working for the city or town plumbing department or the electrical department, you can't do a job in your city, because as the inspector, you can't inspect your own jobs. So I get exactly what you're saying.
And go one step further, and I got this from several firefighters who were EMTs, who were friends of my neighbors, who said one of the most difficult things they faced was responding to a call and finding it that the person who was severely injured was someone they knew personally. And so when you get to the issue of citizenship, it's interesting that the Constitution doesn't say anything about citizenship in relation to voting. And this frequently comes up where certain cities have said, well, let's let non-citizens vote in local elections because, well, if they own a house here, they're paying taxes here, they ought to be able to vote. And arguably that this is the same issue, is being a citizen a qualification or something that would make you a better police officer than if you weren't. Now, my son-in-law told me when he was at the police academy, prior to his becoming full-time permanent in New Bedford, that there were several non-citizens in the Massachusetts Police Academy. And who were they? They were people who had been sent there by the United States Department of Defense from other countries where they were working to establish civilian police departments. So, this hysteria about citizenship to me is just pandering to a group of people who don't seem to understand the qualifications for being a police officer don't have anything whatsoever to do with whether you're a citizen or not, because you have to take an oath to uphold all of the laws.
There you go.
Whether you're a citizen or not.
Very well said. Thank you. I do appreciate the call. 508-996-0500. And if I could pile on for a second. I've brought this up before, but I think it bears repeating. I have heard people say that they would not want to be arrested by someone that was a non-citizen. And I'm really worried about you. Because number one, I would hope that you don't want to ever be arrested. And if you have been arrested before, were you worried at that particular time about making bail? What you did wrong to get yourself arrested, if you indeed did do something wrong? Or were you thinking, is the arresting officer a United States citizen or a permanent legal resident? And if the last one is your thought process, well, maybe you deserve to be arrested.
The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised.
And welcome back, 508-996-0500. So, Officer Taj, he's working at the feast Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or maybe on Sunday, and there's a huge disturbance. Are you telling Officer Taj he can't make an arrest because he's not a U.S. citizen? 508-996-0500. Thank you. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I am. How are you?
I'm good. I'm going to make a point in favor of Officer Taj. If a police officer goes into a neighborhood with a certain ethnicity, I think it's good to have a police officer from that ethnicity. And I'll give you an example. Many years ago, you might remember the case called Big Dan's.
I do. I wasn't here, but I do know it well. Yes.
Well, at that scene at the time, there were 4 police officers and a sergeant at the scene. And when it finally came time to make the arrest, the sergeant made a good move. He picked the one police officer who was from Madeira and spoke fluent Portuguese to be the arresting officer, because they were claiming they didn't speak English, even though we know they did. So the arresting officer was from Madeira, spoke fluent Portuguese, was able to give them their rights in Portuguese and take their statements in Portuguese, so that it was an extra level that they couldn't say was a problem of miscommunication.
I think that's fair. I'm going to ask, though, was that officer at the time, was he a U.S. citizen who just happened to be from Madeira? I mean,
yes, he happened to be from Madeira.
Okay, but so how do we relate that here? My guess is there are other officers that know quiche, but I don't know. I'm not going to try to pretend like I do. My
correlation there is that it's helpful to have somebody speaking the language and understanding the culture of what other ethnicity they're dealing with. I think that's very helpful.
I do, but I think that you can also find a U.S. citizen police officer to do that. That's where I'm coming from. But your point's well taken.
Okay, thank you. That was my point.
All right, I appreciate it. 508-996-0500. Yeah, Kim Pittman brought this up, and sometimes I not that I don't think Ken is right, a lot of the times, but I think he kind of hit it square in the head. This guy, Taj, he's a victim of circumstance. I wish I had my Three Stooges stuff with me right now. But he is. He applied, and somewhere, he must have read, maybe in the frequently asked questions, about whether or not you should be a U.S. citizen or that you have to be a U.S. citizen. And maybe he asked. He did not. When I saw him at Market Basket, he did not want to answer any questions dealing with this, as you can probably imagine. My guess is that he was forewarned, don't really talk about this, just do your job at this particular time. And he's still new. He's not going to try to buck any rules at this particular time. So if that's your problem, how the city handled this, I think you are well reasoned to be that way. And if it's really bothering you that there is no policy that you should be a U.S. citizen, well, one way to rectify it is to talk to your city councilors. Do you think that you can get 6, 7, 8 votes that would be in favor of only a U.S. citizen being a New Bedford police officer? I'm going to take a guess here. I think it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to get 6 votes for something like this. Your next best move would be to try to do a ballot question. Now, you have to get the voters of the city of New Bedford. My guess is you'll get more than 10% showing up for this particular vote. But do you think you have the votes? Do you think you have the votes in order to to make New Bedford a U.S. citizen-only police department. Now, someone called in earlier. I don't know the person. He did not give his name, but he says that there are 3 other people on the police force, New Bedford police force, that are not U.S. citizens. Might be true, but I have nothing to show it. The city, Jonathan Darling, who works as the public information officer for the city, and also Officer Corolla, said that he would make sure that we get all of that information about how many other officers, if there are any other officers on the police department that are not U.S. citizens. That should be interesting to find out, too, because if the city has other officers, then one can easily deduce that for the short, long period of time that there was a mistake with the frequently asked questions. I cannot find anybody, present or past police officers for the city of New Bedford, who can either remember or tell me that there was a question dealing with citizenship when they filled out the application to become a New Bedford police officer. If there, and I can understand, when you're filling out and you're putting in your address, you might, you're going to put in a local address or pretty much close to local address. You're not going to say that you're from Lisbon, Portugal. So if there is a question about citizenship, I'd like to see it. I think a lot of us would like to see it. I also believe that we are now in a day and age, never mind DEI, never mind affirmative action. We are now, but think city of New Bedford. We are now in that day and age where not only do I believe the city councilors wouldn't vote something in, a change to make it, and I could be wrong. And if there are city councilors listening at this particular time, I'd love to hear from you. I'm not saying that there aren't 1 or 2, maybe 3, that would vote to make it definitely U.S. citizen only police force. But I don't think that there are enough votes within the council. I don't think the administration is going to want to make that change. And I don't think that the voters of the city of New Bedford would be willing to make that change. And I mean the voters, the U.S. citizen voters of the city of New Bedford would be willing to make that change. I could be wrong. I am a betting type person, and I think if we were to have a ballot question, I would probably bet $5, $10, $50 that permanent residents and U.S. citizens could be a New Bedford police officer. We already see it happening in other towns. And this is the next question dealing with this. If New Bedford were to make it a law that you could only be a U.S. citizen, could that be a violation of rights? So in other words, legal permanent residents can do everything but vote, but this isn't about voting. This is about some type of job. Wouldn't that be discriminatory against other legal permanent residents? 508-996-0500. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that you could be going down that slippery slope. I don't know if it's If it's reasonable, I get. I should have asked Paul Santos when I saw him earlier to get his opinion on that. Hello. Hello,
is it me?
it's you.
It's Gilly Satfield.
It's Gilly. I know
Okay.
I'm acting silly. I'm sorry.
No.
You, Gilly wanted to talk last evening. He happened to call as the show had just ended. So go ahead, Gilly.
Okay, why I called too is about you said about you can't find something on the thing from any police officers or anything. Well, there's two things I'm going to talk to after what I said. I want to talk about, but right now, what you said you have two officers that can help you out a lot. And you know who the two officers I'm talking about?
No, go ahead. I'm listening.
Okay. I'm sure Mr. Turgeon, he was president of the union, right?
Yes, he was.
So he should know the rules and the contracts and everything. And you also have Chris Carter,
Yep.
politician. He should know what those things changed or said. So you have two people and I hear them call in when they want to bring their points across. See if they remember, or they only remember the stuff that they just want to remember.
That's great point. Great point.
Okay. Now get back to what I wanted to say, and I said it on Ken's program, and I said it on. Bottom line is, you have everybody out here. They all have the thing in their mind that our mayor, Mitchell, and I've thrown him under the bus, and I worked on his campaign. He's going to do what he wants to do. He's a Democrat, okay?
Okay.
Okay, he's a Democrat. He doesn't worry about. He just worries about He did it. What he said that on the ice where he came, they broke the window and everything. He did say and never clarified it, and put a lot of officers on. He said that they should have waited for their lawyers.
Yeah,
And there's a
he did.
lawyer.
Yes, he did. Yes, I do remember this.
Okay, so who is it for? Is it for the people or is it for the Democratic Party? But my thing is...
Hold on. So you asked that question. The people in question are residents of the city of New Bedford. So they are the people as much as anybody else. And he is an attorney. And the folks said that their attorney was coming down. So I could sit here and argue back and forth about whether the mayor made the right call or not, but I see his side of the street.
So do I. But he didn't clarify it as an attorney should. Okay? He didn't clarify because what he said was they should have waited for their attorney. So now all the police people out there, they're going to stop somebody, have to say, well, do I have to wait for their attorney? They're putting a lot of their lives in jeopardy.
How so? I mean, how
so?
I said how so? Because how many times does somebody get on a phone and call their boy to come down and shoot up the scene? How many?
So in other words,
How many?
How many? What do you mean by shooting up the scene?
In other words, you don't know who they're talking to on the phone. They may be calling their boys to come down and to try to rescue them. That's what I mean by shoot up the scene. All right.
I can't give you a number.
That's right. You can't because it rarely happens if it does.
But even if it happens once, it's wrong.
Okay, but once doesn't mean you got to now all of a sudden change a policy. Excuse me. I guess we've already talked about changing a policy when it comes to who can be a police officer or not. But you know what I mean.
No, I do know what I mean. But my way to get around all this is, like I said, the people should have a choice, and the city councilors can do this. The mayor wants a recall petition. He brought it up, okay? And the city council was like they were worried about themselves. Here's a chance for Burglar, as president of the city council, call for a special meeting to bring all the city councilors in and bring the recall petition to the floor and have them vote on it. And if they pass it for the recall, now we can recall the mayor. We don't have to put up with him for the next 2 years.
Yeah, but I don't think anybody's going to recall the mayor. Gilly.
Well, no, it's not the point, but it will be on his record that the people in New Bedford.
You know what? I don't think it's going to go that far, Gilly. I don't think that there will ever be a chance for the recall vote.
There's always a chance. You see, sometimes everybody uses that philosophy. There's never a chance, but there's always a chance.
You're right. I stand corrected. There's always a chance. In this particular case, it's a slim to not none chance.
Okay, I can understand. I'll play by your rules. But when he does try to run for another office, that's going to come up because it'll be on his record that the people in New Bedford try to recall him.
Got you on that. I appreciate it, Gilly. Thanks for the call.
Bye-bye.
Bye. 508-996-0500. Let's take one more before the break. Hello.
Afternoon, Brian. How you doing today?
I am, and how are you?
Very well, very well. Hey, one thing, as I was been listening to all this going along, I myself always thought that if a person with a green card went into a branch of the service, once they completed their time in, they would automatically become a citizen. And I found out yesterday that's not true.
It is not true, yes. Yeah, I heard somebody else call about it with Ken today. That's not true. In fact, there's funny, not funny to this family, but there was a person that did 2 tours in Iraq who has a green card, and he is in ICE detention right now.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, I heard that this morning about that, and I said, wow. But they can expedite it for you to a point, but it's not an automatic thing. And for my whole life, I always thought it was.
No, you probably saw it on one of the war movies that we used to watch about World War II or something like that.
That may well be.
Yeah.
Well, all right. I just wanted to add that in there for something else for people to know if they didn't know that. Because at 72 years old, I just learned that yesterday.
Well, I sit in this chair and I learn something new every day that I sit here. So we're in great company.
All right, then, my friend, you have a great weekend.
You too.
We'll see you later.
Nice talking to you. 508-996-0500. Yeah, it's one of those fallacy. And, this is a very important topic, the one that we have been talking about for the past week, because I think this allows the residents of New Bedford, the citizens, I guess I should say, of New Bedford, the voting populace of New Bedford, to make some decisions. Not necessarily, I mean, Gilly's got a point, I guess, if you want to go down the recall road, but more about, do you want all of your police officers to be U.S. citizens, or are you okay with U.S. citizens and legal permanent residents? It's your chance to make this decision. If you don't like the sleight of hand that has happened over the past week within the Mitchell administration and the police department, well, get together and get up a ballot question to try to change it. Or try to solidify it, make it in writing, so people know for sure this is what the rule, never mind what the frequently asked questions are. Here is a written policy. This is what we, the people, the citizens, and the voters of the city of New Bedford want. We either want U.S. citizens only as New Bedford police officers, or we are okay with U.S. citizens and legal permanent residents being police officers in the city of New Bedford. You make the choice. Don't just leave it up to the mayor and or the city council.
The illiterate of the 21st century are not going to be the people who cannot read and write. The illiterate of the 21st century are going to be the people who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn.
And welcome back. ABC is getting ready to tell us what they would like us to know at the top of the hour. We can keep this topic on the table. There's a couple of other things that I'd like to bring up during hour number 2. One is a story that makes you shake your head. It made me shake my head. There was an incident at a Lowe's, you know, the home improvement store, Lowe's, where a young woman was in one of the stalls and a man came in, used the stall next to her, and while she was doing whatever it was that she was doing, she notices a telephone go down to the floor and the camera is on, seemingly taking a shot of whatever it was that she was doing in that particular stall. She did tell her story to police. Turns out that there was another person who had the same incident happen to her. So now the cops are out looking for a person. They identified who the person was. Turns out it was an 18-year-old boy man filming them.